What to take to the polls. About two-thirds of states require identification when you go to the polls in order to vote, and about half of the states with voter ID laws require a photo identification. Some acceptable forms of photo ID include your driver's license, state issued ID cards, government employee ID cards, military ID cards, tribal photos, firearms license, passports, and voter identification cards. If you do not have any of these acceptable forms of ID, you still may be able to cast your vote on election day. You may be asked to sign a form affirming your identity, or you may be asked to cast what is called a provisional ballot, and is also known as a challenge ballot or an affidavit ballot. This is done when there is a question about the voter's eligibility. The voter will be required to bring in appropriate documentation within days after the election, and if that documentation is not brought in, the ballot can be thrown out. Another hiccup that can occur when you go to the polls is if your name and your address does not match. This can usually happen when the voter has either married and changed their name on maybe their driver's license or whatever ID they presented at the time of voting, and it does not match what they have on file for their voter's registration. This can also happen when the voter has moved, and again, one address on the ID does not match the address on the voter's registration. To avoid problems, always update your voter's registration when you move or when you have a name change.